Hi, everyone, and welcome along to the Ergonomically Speaking podcast, the podcast that aims to help you reduce and even eliminate work related discomfort. I am your host, Neve Pentney of Boyne Ergonomics. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that you're able to take away some useful practical advice from this podcast to help you reduce your own risk of discomfort at the workplace or help manage the risks among the people that you might be responsible for. So now that we know why we're here, let's get started. Hello, and welcome along to another episode of the Ergonomically Speaking podcast with myself, Neve Pentney of Boyne Ergonomics. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about something that is part of all of our lives now in one way or another, and that is the screen. So, whether it's for work, for study, for winding down in the evening, screens and monitors are now a huge part of our lives. But here's the thing. Poor screen setup can really take a toll on your health. I'm talking neck and shoulder pain, eye strain, headaches, fatigue. So, in today's episode, I'm going to be guiding you through how to position and adjust your screen, set them up, whether it's your laptop, your monitor, your tablet, to help reduce discomfort and keep you feeling well throughout the day. And first thing I'm going to talk about is monitor placement. So, where do you put your screens? And a common issue that I come across now more and more, still this far into homeworking, is incorrect monitor placement. So people have the screens, but they just don't have them in the right place. I'm including laptops in this. And I have in my DSE assessments now started to bring in phone positioning as well as part of the education piece around monitors, because a lot of us will use our phones for work too, not just the laptops and the screens. But why does monitor placement matter? If your monitor is not positioned in the right place for you, the work you do, and also taking into consideration what glasses you wear, it's going to encourage adverse postures, poor postures of the neck, the shoulders, the back. It can increase the risk of eye strain, eye fatigue, headaches, and migraines. If your screen, for example, is too low, so think of you holding your phone down near your belly button or the laptop on the table, it's going to encourage these head down, slouching, rounded shoulder position. If the screen is too high, it's going to encourage looking up, head up positions, neck extension, and repetitive movements as you look up to the screen and back down to your desk. If it's too far from you, it's going to be difficult to read and will encourage the forward leaning postures that I see sometimes. And if it's too close, well, it's going to cause eye strain and fatigue. So there are different ways to position your monitors based on how many you have, how you use them, and whether or not you wear glasses and what kind of glasses you wear. But generally speaking, if we're talking about distance, as a rule of thumb, and if all is okay with your vision or you have the correct lenses for your eyes, your screen should be approximately arm's length away from you. And your position is you're seated back in your chair, shoulders relaxed, hands on the keyboard and mouse. In that position, reach your hand out in front of you. If your tips of your fingers touch the screen, that's okay. If there's a bit of a distance between your fingers and the screen, to be honest, as long as you can read the screen comfortably without leaning forward, that's okay. But if you find that you do tend to lean forward, pull them in a little closer. If when you put your hand out that you find you can't actually stretch out your arm at all because the screens are too close, well, then you need to move them back to the end of your fingers. If you have your screens at arm's length away from you and you find you're having difficulty reading the text on the screen at this position, well then, of course, you can increase the size of text, you can increase the size of the images, but you may need to visit your optician. Get an eye test done, particularly if it's been more than 2 years, just to make sure that we're not a little deficient in this DSE computer distance. And if so, we can get that easily corrected with your optician. The next thing we want to look at is glare and reflections. And this one is actually quite overlooked by a lot of people. I see a lot of people who technically have their screens in really good positions, but we have an issue with glare and reflection. So, to reduce the risk of glare and reflection, ideally, the monitor should be positioned at a right angle to the window or wherever your natural light source is. Now, if this is not possible, position the natural light behind your screens using adjustable blinds or curtains to try and eliminate any direct sunlight at times of day that you might have to. Um, Avoid having your natural light facing the screen, so behind you, because that will cause glare and reflections. And I will say, sometimes, depending on where you work, this might mean that you have to move your workstation around a little at different times of the year. So, for example, my room, I have my desk on one wall for the first half of the year, and soon now, probably in a few weeks, maybe around the end of May, I will move my desk to the other wall because the way that my room faces, the sun glares in at different points. And halfway through the year, I find if I move my desk around a little bit, I can cut out some of the glare. If it's not possible to position the natural light behind the screen or at a right angle, and you absolutely have to have it behind you, just make sure you've got curtains and blinds. And also watch for your mirrors. So a lot of people are working in bedrooms and they have mirrors and they have mirrored wardrobe doors, that kind of thing. And even when you have your screens positioned the way we'd want them, there's glare, reflections coming off the mirrors and bouncing onto the screens. Now, if you're not sure if your screen has glare, sit in your normal work position and turn the screen off. The glare will show up really, really easily on a dark screen. It can be hard to see it on it, especially when you have your settings to the standard kind of white background. And if you're experiencing glare from the overhead lights that you use in the room, tilt the screen angle down a little bit or move the position of the workstation to reduce the glare impact and reflections from those lights overhead. The next thing to consider is the height of your monitor. So, generally speaking, the rule of thumb is if you don't wear varifocals or bifocals, the screen should be high enough that when you're seated back in your chair, nice and upright, not straight, but upright, supported, and your ear is positioned over your shoulder and you're looking straight ahead, your eye line should rest on the top 1/3 of your screen. And I'd say the internet or the word toolbars are a good guide. And this applies to all screens. You're working on it, laptops, monitors, tablets. That's the height they should be at. Now, set your seated height first. Make sure you have yourself positioned with elbows level at the table and the shoulders are relaxed. Then set your monitor height. And if you're using a sit-stand workstation and your screens are set up correctly at a good height, you should not have to adjust the height of the screens every time you change from the seated to standing position. If you're doing that, one of the heights is off. You shouldn't have to because remember, the length of your torso, the distance from your relaxed elbow position to your eyes doesn't change whether you're sitting or standing. So if you're adjusting those screens when you move positions, something's off somewhere. If you wear varifocals or bifocals, you may, depending on the prescription, need to position the screen lower than the traditional kind of resting eyeline height and tilt the top of the screen back slightly so you can see the screen through the DSC or middle distance part of your glasses without having to tilt the head backwards. That's a very common position I see with people who wear varifocals and bifocals is this kind of head, neck extension, head tilting back and looking down through the bottom of the glasses. That will cause aches and pains very quickly if that's how you're working. If you are using a single screen, which some people still do, so the screen, laptop, tablet, or monitor should be positioned directly in front of your seated position. That's for good alignment. You should have your screen, keyboard, and you in a straight line at the optimum height for whether you're wearing the varifocals or not. If you're using two screens, the placement of the screens is going to be pretty much based on how you use them. So if you, for example, have one screen that is what you'd call your main one, you're doing like 70, 80% of your work on that one. And then you have a second screen, and this might be a monitor or this might be a laptop, and that has maybe 20, 30% of your work. Well, then position the 70 to 80% screen directly in front of you. Position the support screen, we'll call it, next to it, and angle it slightly towards you. Make sure they're the same height. And if it's a laptop, get it on a good stand, get it nice and high. Ideally, if you can, that support screen should be based on the same side as your dominant hand. Now, that's not always possible depending on your desk, but that's what we try and aim for. If you use both screens 50-50, which is how I would use mine, you position them side by side, angle them slightly inwards, and your seated position should be in the middle. So you are nearly lining up where those two screens meet. Now, a lot of people use curved screens and they use them as a split screen. Yes, if you're using a curved screen, but you're using it as a split screen, you still want to have it positioned centrally. So you would treat it like a single monitor directly in front of you and you're in the middle. And if you're using 3 screens, which a lot of people do now, place your main screen directly in front of you, put your 2 additional screens either side of it, and turn them both inwards. So the screens will essentially form a gentle arc around you. Remember, the screens should be set up so that you can see the most amount of screen with the minimum amount of repetitive neck movement. So correct positioning and settings will reduce the adverse postures and the repetitive movements that we see sometimes with the screens, reducing the risk of developing musculoskeletal disorders, eye strain, fatigue, and headaches. So positioning is really, really important. Next, we're going to look at settings. And again, this is something I include in my DSE assessments, particularly if somebody's reporting some kind of ocular symptoms. Eye discomfort is actually a common complaint among people who work on computers for a living. And the symptoms you might experience include dry eyes, a little bit red, itchy eyes, sore eyes, headaches, lack of concentration, blurred vision. And ensuring that your screen settings are optimized for where you're working can go a long way to reduce the workload on the eyes and reduce this discomfort. And specifically, in particular, when we look at contrast, brightness, and the hue settings. So that's what we'll have a look at. Contrast, and a lot of people aren't sure what it is the ratio of luminance between the brightest white and the darkest black. So, how the text stands out from the background. And if your contrast levels are too low or too high, it's going to increase the risk of eye fatigue. Now, usually on most mobile devices, the contrast level is set and can't really be adjusted. But on your standard office monitors, you can adjust them, usually by popping into the menu on the actual physical screen itself, navigating to the contrast option. The recommended contrast level is between 65 and 70%. Next, we have brightness. And this is one I find a lot of people have wrong slightly at home. A lot of people at home have their screens too bright. The appropriate brightness level of your screen relates to the light level in your work area. So the brightness settings of your screen, for example, in your well-lit office shouldn't be the same as the brightness setting on your monitor at home that might not be as well lit. So as the light level in your work area changes, so too should your brightness level. And the brightness level should match your environment. And the best way to check this, I tell people, is if you walk away and leave your desk for a few minutes, go get a glass of water, coffee, and you walk into the room and you can see the brightness, you can see the light coming out of the screens, and they nearly look like they're lighting your work area. It's too high. Your screens should not be lighting your work area. That would mean that the screen brightness is too high for that area at that time. And what would you do? Well, you either brighten the room or you tone down the brightness of the screens. If your screen brightness is too high, the more blue light is emitted. If the screen is too dull, it's going to be difficult to see the images, it's going to wash them out. And both of these, too high and too low, can increase the risk of eye strain, fatigue, and headaches, just in slightly different ways. Standard in the office, I would usually have brightness settings of 60 to 75% because office light levels are usually quite bright. The light levels themselves are quite stable during the day. So brightness levels don't generally need to be adjusted on the screen. If you're working from home, I usually bring the brightness level down, and depending on the light level of the room, a brightness level of 40 might be plenty, but it does depend on the light level. The lower the light level, the lower the brightness level should be. And if you are experiencing eye strain, fatigue, headaches, I do recommend bringing down the brightness setting on your screen a little bit to see if that helps reduce the symptoms. And another setting you can adjust is the color temperature or the hue. So ideally, if the area is bright and well lit, you want your color temperature to be on the cooler side. So cooler tones, which are around 6500K, they're the standard monitor settings. On some devices, you can actually change the color temperature from cool to warm by turning on night mode, comfort mode, it's called on some devices, eye protect mode. Essentially, it has less blue light being emitted. It's like a yellow kind of tint on the screen. And it's quite nice. And that setting's around 3400K. There are apps available that can actually automatically adjust this for you during the day. I use F.lux on my own laptop, but my laptop hue will change during the day based on the time of year and the time of day. So it starts off quite bright and cool in the morning, and come the evening time, my screen temperature will have changed to a more warmer, yellower tone, more suitable for that time of the evening. Another thing to think about that a lot of people have started to use is dark mode. A lot of people will change the settings on their monitors and on their computers to present their programs in dark mode, which is black background with white writing. And a lot of people report reduced eye fatigue and eye strain symptoms with dark mode. So definitely something for you to try if you have it available to you. As with all DSE workstation equipment, positioning and settings are only part of the risk. You could have optimum screen height, great positioning, optimal settings, but if you look at the screen for too long, the muscles in the eyes will get tired, the eyes will dry out, and they will start to become tired and irritated. So it is recommended that even when everything is set up to the absolute best, most appropriate settings for where you work, you should be following 20-20-20 rule. It essentially means that every 20 minutes, you should be looking away from your screen at an object 20 feet away for 20 seconds. Do not look at your phone, it doesn't count. This will give your eyes time, give the eye muscles time to recover and the eyes to rehydrate. So every time you leave the desk to get a glass of water, a cup of coffee, go to the bathroom, that counts. But even within those micro breaks, you need to be looking away from your screen. And it's great if you are near a window, because I do find sometimes when you're on calls or you're listening or you're thinking on something, it's nice to be able to look out the window and give you that natural eye break. You're looking out the window at kind of nothing at all, really, and just letting your eyes recover from the intense work that is screens. Just remember, no matter how high your resolution, no matter how well you have it set up, the images and the text on your screens are always going to be pixels. So they're always harder work to get that image, bring it into our brain, and translate it into what we know it as. So to wrap up, look, screens are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. But a few simple tweaks to your setup, your settings, your positioning, you can really, really reduce the risk of discomfort and fatigue. So take a moment today. Check your monitor setup. Is it at arm's length? Is the height right for you and the glasses you wear? Is there any glare on the screen? What about your settings? Have you ever adjusted them? Have you ever looked at them? If not, go in, play around with the menu a little bit. Small changes make a big difference when it comes to musculoskeletal strain, fatigue, and computer workstations. So we'll leave it there for now. As always, the blog post related to this episode, the link to it will be in the show notes, and you should check it out. There's some images, really good images around screen positioning if you're not quite sure where yours should be in that blog post. As always, My social media details are in the show notes. Email address, please contact me with any queries, any questions, any suggestions. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this helpful, I would really appreciate it if you shared it with a friend or a colleague who also works on a screen and you think would benefit from it. And until next time, everybody, stay well.